Hello and welcome to another Flashback Friday edition of the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast here exclusively on the BodySlam.net YouTube channel. I am your phenomenal host, Mr. Podcasting, Chris Belcher. You can follow me at Chris Belcher24 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please do that. I love interacting with listeners. I love getting your feedback, answering your questions, and that sort of thing. So please make sure you give me a follow. The show is at PBW Podcast. If you want to keep up with all of the happenings with the show, make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at PBW Podcast. As I said, welcome to another Flashback Friday edition here on the BodySlam.net YouTube channel. Today's episode will be in honor of one of the greatest of all time. There's no other way to put it. He's one of the best ever. I'm talking about Le Champion, the Ayatollah of rock and roll, Y2J, the GOAT, the man of 1,004 holds. The list goes on and on. Save us, Y2J, Chris Jericho. He's one of the best ever. He's got enough nicknames to be the best ever. Let's put it that way. But his birthday was earlier this week. I believe it was on Monday. Maybe it was Monday. Maybe Tuesday. Don't exactly remember. Anyway, 51 years young or old, depending on what your definition is. But anyway, so this episode is going to be in honor of that. Last season, if you are a longtime listener of the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast, you watched or you listened to the career perspective episode that myself and my brother from another mother, Jared Justice, that we cranked out for you. It was around the time that Chris Jericho appeared on Stone Cold Steve Austin's Broken Skull Sessions. So we talked about that interview, some of the contents of that, and we kind of gave our perspective on Jericho's career, some of our favorite matches, moments, highlights, that sort of thing. So this will be, again, so this was back in April, I believe is when this episode was recorded. So there may be some things that are a little bit dated. But again, that's why it's called Flashback Friday. So you're going to get some of that here on the show. Once again, thank you so much for checking us out. If you haven't subscribed to the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast on BodySlam.net's YouTube channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, click that notifications bell. That way you get an alert every single time that our show pops up. Make sure you're listening to us every Monday and Wednesday for brand new episodes, but all of our episodes are available to you in the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast playlist. So thanks so much. Make sure you're tuning in to all of our new episodes. We cover the old stuff, we cover the new stuff, everything in between. There's something for every wrestling fan on the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast. We hope you you're digging what we're cranking out here. We're just wrestling fans talking about wrestling stuff. We want to talk about what you want to hear about. And today, we're going to talk all about Le Champion, Chris Jericho. Let's get to it. Let's not waste any more time. Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is a Flashback Friday exclusively for BodySlam.net, all about Chris Jericho. Hope you enjoy it. So here we go, man. Chris Jericho appearing on the Broken Skull Sessions. Perfect timing. WrestleMania weekend, new Peacock deal, all the things. We talked about it last week. It's a win-win for everybody that Chris Jericho, an AEW contracted wrestler, is on WWE programming. But I have to say, man, before we dive deep into the interview and all the things that happened, my main takeaway from the interview is how much love and respect Chris Jericho has for the wrestling business. People may talk about him being a sellout or tough to deal with or whatever, but the man has an incredible mind for the business and he knows it. But he's not the kind of person that really tries to rub it in your face or anything, but he knows that he has a talent and he wants to use it to the best of his ability. And judging by some things in this interview, he recognizes when it's not being used right. That's my big takeaway. What's your thoughts on that? And maybe you have a different takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, Jericho is, but he's one of those people that, he's humble. And just like whenever that we met him, we've met him a couple times. And he's just so cool. I know I've told the story, but maybe we have a whole new batch of listeners this time, and now you can see us. So I mean that makes it a new experience. But whenever we met him with Fozzy, me and you, I remember there's a whole group of people, and he was like, "Okay, so who wants to be first? Come on up." And so I looked at you, and you kind of just looked back at me, and I was like, "Screw it, I'll go." And so I started going toward him. I was like, "Hey, man, stuck out my hand. I'm Jared. This is Chris, my cousin. Blah blah blah." And he's like, "All right, guys, come on in." And he puts his arms around both of us. Moses, the wonder dog, is thinking I'm going to try to pet him or something. But he puts his arm around both of us, and he's like, "Okay, take a picture." And he's like, "Okay, let's scoot over this way. Yeah, right there. Let's see how that lighting is. Okay, yep. Take another picture. Yeah, that's the one that works." And I mean, who does that? Most people just snap the picture, get out, and
move on.
Yep. I mean, that's what, God bless him and God rest his soul, Road Warrior Animal did. It was like, nah, okay. You want to put the thing on? You want to put the spikes? Okay, yeah, all right, yeah. And just signs. I've told that story. He signed it, threw it down, and I just walked off like I was going to leave it. And he had to make me come back and get it. And I was doing that just to be a prick because he just didn't care. But Jericho does. Right. And that's the difference.
As far as wrestlers go, the closest one that I can think of like that, I know you met Becky Lynch and had an incredible experience. I met AJ Styles and had an incredible experience as well. But as far as you and I meeting them together in the interaction, Jeff Jarrett was very, very close to Chris Jericho. That dude would have stood and talked our ear off if whoever was with him would have let him.
And James E. Cornette.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Corny.
Pipe. Well, it was a double Smoky Mountain, double cage, double barbed wire, double heavenly bodies. Mother, But yeah, you know Jeff Jarrett's going to be doing a show with Big Boy now, Conrad.
Yeah, Conrad, not Big Boy. Conrad.
He's a big boy. He's a big boy. I mean, I'm somewhat of a big boy, but he's a real big boy.
Friday, April the 7th is the launch date. I think. No, sorry. Tuesday, April the 4th is the launch date for that podcast. So, yes, I'm very much looking forward to that podcast. I think it's going to be incredible. But we are not here to talk about Jeff Jarrett as much as we enjoyed him. We are talking about Y2J, or don't call him Y2J anymore, as he likes to say, Chris Jericho. This career that he has put together, this 30 years, is covered as best as it can be in 2 hours. I highly recommend, if you want to pay your Peacock subscription just for 1 month, just go watch this interview, and it's well worth your money. But having said that, they talk all about his career from Japan to Germany to Mexico to ECW, WCW, WWE, AEW, all those points in between. When do you remember? Now, we're going to try our best. Let me preface this by saying we're going to try our best not to cover exactly what they covered, because obviously we don't have the clout. We don't have the stories. We don't have the being recognized, the publicity. That's the word I'm looking for, that they have.
We don't have it.
Thank you. Listen, I just set you up for that one. Look at you. We do not have it, as Jericho would say. So we're not going to cover this exactly of his career perspective. We're going to give our highlights as to what we enjoy, what we remember about Jericho's career, and we'll throw some things in from the interview that we remember. When do you first remember discovering Chris Jericho? Now, I know that you and I, we watched a lot of old school wrestling back in the day. I know we met around 94 and 95. Jericho was just starting to make a name for himself in the Indies, hadn't quite made it to WCW yet. Did you have a knowledge of Jericho in those ECW Mexico days, or did you first discover him in WCW?
So he came to Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
I forgot about that one. Yeah, Smoky Mountain.
And I can't picture him specifically in my head, but I remember them announcing Chris Jericho over the loudspeakers at a Smoky Mountain Wrestling event.
Yep.
And I mean, I just remember thinking that he kind of looked like Shawn Michaels. But other than that, I remember seeing him a little bit in ECW and some of those VHSs that I bought that were, I'm sure, pirated.
it was ECW, it was pirated, pal.
Yeah. And so Moses, Wonder Dog, come here and get it. But I remember the first time that I really, really remember him would be on WCW on like a main event or WCW Saturday night. I don't know if he was on the Power Hour or not, but around that time, I remember seeing him in WCW, and I mean, he stood out. But my young mind at that point, I never thought that he would be what I never thought anybody that I saw that wasn't already on top was going to ever be on top because my mind just didn't work that way. But probably Smoky Mountain Wrestling, hearing his name over the loudspeakers was my first memory.
I don't remember seeing him in Smoky Mountain. I could be wrong. I was a little tight back then. You probably remember more details about Smoky Mountain than I do. But we sure went to a lot of those shows, that's for sure. Our area was a hotbed for Smoky Mountain Wrestling, so we saw a lot of stuff. I don't remember specifically. I do vaguely remember seeing some of his ECW stuff. And I think it was around the time that it was pretty relevant. I don't think it made it to WCW yet, but I distinctly remember seeing Chris Jericho in WCW coming out to that stupid generic music that he came out to that they gave him, and he would go up to the barricade. Yeah, it was something stupid.
Yeah.
And then he would go up to the barricade, and he would latch onto the barricade. People would touch him, and he would say, "Come on, baby!"
Yeah, that's what I remember.
That's what I distinctly remember about Chris Jericho in WCW. And then, of course, he went on to have a really good career in WCW. And I think, like you said, he was one of those guys that wasn't on top right away. But I think I latched onto him, and maybe you did too, because he was in that cruiserweight division. He talked about on the interview how he did not belong in that cruiserweight division, but he was sort of lumped in with those guys. And just like he said on the interview, obviously those cruiserweights is what kept WCW afloat because of all the mad. They had the star power, but those cruiserweights is what kept people watching.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see. Right now I sit about probably 210 pounds. And I remember him being a little taller than me whenever that we met. But if you looked at our shoulders, I might even be just a smidge more broad. Now, his arms, if I flex my arms, that's probably what his are not flexed.
Right.
His arms are quite, pretty big. But he definitely should not have been in that cruiserweight, with like a Rey Mysterio, somebody like that. But he blended in, Dean Malenko,
Ultimo Dragon.
I mean, he just fit in. You could slot him in any position. And now, I mean, if you saw during this interview, one thing that I noticed, just because I'm a guy who lifts weights, if you looked at his arms, they looked bigger than Stone Cold's.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I mean, he's a pretty good sized guy. But no matter where you put him, he made himself fit in. He made himself part of the show, and that's something that not anybody can do.
Absolutely. You mentioned the armbar deal. That was one of my all-time favorite Chris Jericho moments at WCW. I think much like any wrestling fan that really paid attention, that's where we latched on to Chris Jericho, was the comedy stuff he was doing with Ralphus. With the announcer Dave Penzer, when he would rip his jacket and then he'd bring him another one, then he'd throw another tantrum, rip his jacket. And then the stuff with Nick Patrick, that was pretty interesting. But that era of Jericho, and I'll pull this out because I have it available. This era of Chris Jericho right here with the hair pulled up and the weird sideburns. It's what I remember most about Jericho, man. And I loved him. He was one of those guys that I'm like you. I didn't know if he was going to be anything, but I definitely wanted him to be.
So I'm going to give a couple shout outs here. The first is to a very great man who passed away. His name is Bill Friend. loved him dearly, just like a part of my family. But whenever that he wanted to speak, because people wouldn't pay attention, a lot of women, talking and everything, he would go, and that's how you knew that he wanted to say something.
Right.
So whenever I threw my hand up, I had a story. So I used to get grounded, of course, because I said things I shouldn't. I was a smart aleck. That was about the only thing I ever.
No, not you.
I know it's hard to believe, but so I was grounded during the Monday Nitro whenever that he did his first big list, of like all the moves and everything.
1,004 holds.
So the only way I could watch wrestling whenever I was grounded was if I got on the treadmill because that was healthy. So I would walk the entire length of what ended up being a 3-hour Monday Nitro. Okay. So, I mean, I was dying. Just trying to make it through because I had to watch my wrestling.
Oh, shoot.
So I was on the treadmill just getting it. And here's Jericho in the ring just reading off this ridiculous list. And so I'm like, okay, all right. So it's going to commercial. Whenever that comes back, this idiot's going to be gone. It comes back. He's still reading the list. Arm bar, arm drag, all this stuff. And I'm just like, my God, I am worn out. Can we please get somebody out here that can do something because I'm about to die? And, I remember that in my young brain, and it stood out. At the time, I didn't realize why it stood out.
Right.
But to this day, I remember that story. I remember that Chris Jericho moment. And that's what he's so good at doing.
Yep.
He even said during the interview, sometimes you get 1 minute, and that 1 minute's all you're going to get. And if you don't make it count, you may not even get that 1 minute next time.
Yep.
He made everything that he did count. And that's why all these years later, I remember just trucking along, sweating on that treadmill, and there he.
Absolutely. So, I think we had bad connection. I think we lost Jared there. So that promo is very interesting because he tells a great story on the Broken Skull sessions about what happened at the commercial break of that promo. So make sure that you do yourself a favor and you go check that out on Peacock, because again, this interview alone is well worth your money. And we're back from our technical difficulties. As you can see, we have postponed a couple days, and we are actually together in person. This is no technology magic. No, none of that. We are technically here. Yes. So sorry about the technical difficulties, but we are back talking about Chris Jericho finishing up his run in WCW. Jared, you just told an awesome story about you watching the list of moves promo, which is fantastic. Before we move on to WWF, Jericho basically created an angle of his own with Goldberg, basically created it out of nothing with the little bit of TV time that he was given. And that's one thing that he harped on a whole lot in this Stone Cold interview, is make the most out of your television time. And he did that. As a kid, obviously we were all Goldberg fans because he was the big guy. Right. But did you have any interest in seeing Jericho and Goldberg at the time? Do you remember?
So at the time, I remember thinking, why is this little bitty feller trying to take on Goldberg? And why do I care? But I mean, they worked it up so much that I was ready for a match.
Sure.
But we never really, I guess, got that match. I think that Jericho was just wanting to do a squash job.
Yeah.
And Goldberg squash him. And we never even got that.
He was he said he always has said he was willing to do the job because he understood that was the point. Right. But he made an incredible angle. He made something out of nothing, basically. So hindsight being 2020, obviously that would have been a moneymaker for WCW because the fans wanted to see that, and that momentum carried Jericho over to the WWF. Had the big thing with The Rock, and then he kind of fell off the wagon a little bit, trying to work WWF style, those sorts of things. Really came into his own when he became the first undisputed champion. Really out of left field. when you have Stone Cold, you have The Rock, and Kurt Angle in this mini tournament against Chris Jericho, and Jericho is the first undisputed champion. It takes him to WrestleMania against Triple H, which was overshadowed by Hogan and Rock, obviously. But I really think that if you go back and watch that match, that was a really good match between Jericho and Triple H that actually main evented the show, but most everybody forgets about it. I think I hate it for those two guys because that was really their only major encounter and nobody remembers it.
That's true. Yeah. But I mean, I did love the matches with Jericho against Stone Cold and then Jericho against The Rock. But those are both incredible. I loved them. I recently just went back and watched them actually. And so I have no complaints about that. Now, it did kind of seem a little bit strange with Jericho not being really one of the top guys in a way, that all of a sudden he just beats both of these legendary top guys.
Yep.
But looking back, it was a cool thing, and he does still harp about it every interview he does.
Yep. I mean, if you were the first undisputed champion, wouldn't you say it every time?
Yeah.
Come on. I'd say it every time too. My goodness. So the big thing that everybody really remembers about Jericho in the WWF is, I mean, there's a lot of things. He had a lot of incarnations in his career, but especially me, the one thing I remember is his feuds with Shawn Michaels.
Yes.
That match with Shawn at WrestleMania 19 goes down as one of the top WrestleMania matches in history. And he told the story on the Broken Skull Sessions about how he had the beginning of the match figured out. No, he had the end of the match, and Shawn had the beginning.
And they put it together.
And then they put it together. He said in like 10 minutes, we were done.
Yeah.
Which just goes to show you how good of a mind Jericho had for the business, even in 2003. We're talking 18 years ago.
Right.
So him and Shawn, absolute magic of that WrestleMania. And then you had him and Shawn later on in 2008, that huge program that they did that lasted like 6-8 months.
Now, is that whenever that Jericho took Shawn's head and rammed it into the Jeritron 3000?
Yes.
Yes. I loved it.
Yes. And then that was when they, said that Shawn's eye was messed up. And I don't know exactly.
What is their fascination with eyes? Let's pluck somebody's eye out and put it back in and tire it out and slam somebody into glass and get glass in their eye. Yeah, pal. Glass in the eye. Ha ha.
I don't know. I have no idea what the fascination is. I mean, I guess it was them just playing off Shawn's lazy eye that he has anyway. And
God gave him a spare. Take out their eye. Take it out.
So anyway, but yeah, talk about that, man. Talk about just those two guys. I don't think that's something that we see that often. Is you look at two of the most incredible in-ring performers of all time at their prime going against each other for like 8 months. That's something that people, I feel like they take for granted and maybe forget that feud.
I'm looking at myself here on the screen, and I notice that I have big white teeth like Roman Reigns all of a sudden. Anyways.
Oh my gosh.
Anyways. No, their feud was awesome. And didn't they have the ladder match?
The ladder match is what capped off the feud for the title. Yep.
Okay, yeah. I thought that was towards the end, but yeah, I loved it. I loved every bit of it. I mean, as soon as Shawn got smashed into the Jeritron, 10 million or whatever it was at that time.
That number did keep going up, didn't it?
Yes. And so, I mean, that just kicked it all off perfectly. And the whole thing was great. I mean, they're about the same size. They have a similar look. I mean, I even said earlier, this guy looks like a young Shawn Michaels or something along those lines.
Yep.
And it was perfect.
Yeah, it really was. Those two guys had incredible chemistry, and it's Jericho working with one of his heroes, and just for Shawn to be as accepting as he was of Jericho, especially because when he got in the ring with him, they had incredible chemistry. That WrestleMania 19 match was the first time that they had ever had ever been in the ring together one-on-one in a singles match. So that was really the major things, at least from my perspective, of Jericho. Before we're going to talk about the List character here in just a second, but
you just made the list.
Yes, which is my favorite Jericho character of all time. Before we talk about the List character, is there anything else from his WWF/E run that really stands out to you as if I'm going to watch something of Jericho and it's not going to be against Shawn Michaels, I'm going to go back and watch fill in the blank. Is there something from his run really that stands out that you recommend? Like, hey, you have to watch this.
His promos, whenever he had the short spiked hair and he went heel and he came out and he would say, quiet, quiet.
Yep.
It was almost like he was like channeling Jake the Snake.
Yeah.
He wanted everybody to be quiet, and he would talk very soft like this.
Yep.
So you had to lean in to say, just like they say about Jake.
Yep.
And I thought that he did that beautifully.
Yep. And that was part of during that run with Shawn Michaels. He started it, I think, before then, but it really kind of elevated at that point. But yeah, his promos. I mean, Jericho's one of the best promos ever in the business, bar none.
So how about the Hell in a Cell match? Didn't he have a Hell in a Cell match with Triple H?
He did. That was that was 2002.
So I would recommend that.
Yeah, for sure. Because that was right after the Mania match. Because he went from the Mania match, Triple H lost the Undisputed title then to Hulk Hogan, and then the next pay-per-view, I'm pretty sure that's when they had the sale. Yeah, I think so.
I remember that from that Hell in the Cell match, him taking a pedigree on top of one of the squares right in the middle of the cell.
Yep.
And I was like, can you imagine just looking down and thinking, okay, if this breaks like it did on Mick Foley, we're dead.
Yep.
I'm taking a pedigree from the top of the cell down to the canvas.
And you're going to land on top of me.
Yeah.
Yep.
And my neck's broke, and both of his knees are broke, probably his hips.
Yep.
But Jericho would most likely have died.
It probably would have. Yeah.
I would have been scared crapless.
Yep. You're absolutely right. So let's go to the list character, man. It's one of my favorite characters of all time. And I love talking about this character. Jericho talked a lot in that interview about, the writing of some of these promos and the writing of this incarnation of Jericho, and how he made it his mission to get over a list, or to get over the clicking of a pen, or to get over the word it. Just the way he is able to command a crowd, especially at that point in his career, it made for one of, if not the best runs of his career. And it's the last one in WWE, at least for the time being. They run that all the way up to WrestleMania 33. And the Kevin Owens match is supposed to be for the Universal title. Jericho is supposed to win as a babyface. He does not. I honestly can remember watching that match, not really thinking too terribly about them being second on Mania, and that being a good match. Obviously, we know by the backstage documentaries and stuff that's not what Vince wanted out of that match, but what have you, it's fine. I don't see it. Obviously, we're not inside the business, but I didn't see that spot as bad for them as they did.
No, but I can also see why they would be pissed. As good as they were, and they had some competition on that card, but as good as they were, those two, I feel like they should have either opened the show at least.
Yep.
If not been like second or third to mine.
Right.
But to just kind of, you have everybody up for the crowd opener, and then you kind of go down.
Yep.
And so they got that down phase. Now they were able to bring everything back up.
Sure.
But they should not have had to try. The crowd should have already been up in anticipation.
Right.
So,
but like I said, I thought it was good regardless. I was invested in it, but maybe that's just me.
Oh, I was too.
I thought that feud was fantastic. It really didn't get capped off the way we all kind of wanted it to, but I mean, I guess it is what it is. Then we see Jericho kind of transition over, and this is something that he and Austin didn't shy away from in the interview, talking about his Japan stuff, talking about how he got to AEW. So as we kind of wrap up talking about Jericho, because I don't want to go through his whole career necessarily. I don't want everybody that's listening or watching on YouTube, if you are, to not watch the Broken Skull sessions, because you need to. I mean, it's that good. You need to watch it. It's 2 hours long, but carve that time out of your day. He talks a lot about how he felt like the success or failure of AEW was on his shoulders, because he was the guy, he was the bridge guy, as he called it. He was the big WWE guy that was carrying this new company. So when you trying to figure out how to say this, I know we don't know like the end result of AEW. Like I know that AEW is going to go on for a while, and that kind of thing. But in hindsight, do you think that AEW has improved Jericho's career, or would you say that it's that he should have hung it up? I know we've openly talked about how kind of his maybe his ring work isn't what it used to be, which obviously he's getting older, so it's not going to be.
And he likes vodka
And
a lot.
He a lot likes vodka. But what do you think as far as AEW being like squarely on his shoulders?
So I think that when he did his Japan stuff, and you definitely need to watch the match with him and Kenny Omega.
The first one.
Yes.
From Japan. Yep.
Yes. That was, whew, man, that was a match.
Good stuff.
But I think right now that he's settling into AEW and he's not doing anything that's crazy exciting at the moment. I think that if he continues down this road, that it'll almost be like Undertaker, kind of like, okay, so when's this guy going to wrap it up? But I mean, I thought that his Japan stuff was really good. I thought that he did really good. He's done really good with AEW and had some good matches, with the exception of that, whatever that Mimosa thing.
Orange Cassidy, yeah, that was garbage.
You can't. Why would you do that? But anyways, I think that if he goes back to WWE and has one last little mini run or one last big retirement match within the next year to 2 years, then I think that would be the perfect kind of cherry on top.
Yep.
But if he continues in AEW for another 5 years and that's where he ends his career, that would be disappointing.
So I'm going to put you on the spot. Run with that. If he goes back to WWE within the next 2 years, who do you put him in that final feud with? Who has the responsibility? Who has the responsibility in WWE of retiring Chris Jericho?
Roman Reigns.
That's the only answer.
It's the only answer.
It's Roman Reigns. It has to be.
Or you could do the final. You could either bring in Goldberg, or you could do Brock Lesnar and have him get squashed and have it like build it up like these two guys really hate each other because he doesn't like either one of them.
Right.
And they don't like him.
Right.
I mean, that would be pretty cool if you did maybe a little feud with them and then you get him in with Roman and Roman ends him.
Right.
I would hate for Brock or Goldberg to end him, but I would like to see one of those two matches in a WWE ring just for old times.
We saw in Goldberg's first WWE run, we saw a couple of things, or like 6-man tags or what. I think they may have wrestled a singles match or two or whatever. But I think Roman Reigns is the only answer as far as ending Jericho's career, especially on the reign, no pun intended, that Roman is on right now. All right, man. Let's wind this thing down when we talk about Jericho. Like we said at the top of this podcast, he's one of both of our favorite wrestlers. I know this is another tall question, but if you're looking at the Mount Rushmore professional wrestling, is Jericho on it?
How many people are we putting on the Mount?
4,
5?
4. Mount Rushmore has 4 faces.
Yeah.
So who you got? Is Jericho on it?
I think so. I think you could make a case to have Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold.
Yep, I know.
Brock.
I know. Yep, I know.
Shawn and Jericho and leave Flair off.
I'm saying, okay, so if you're going...
No, we're just 4, so you have to...
See, Jericho...
I don't know, man. Let's just expand the map.
Well, I would say if you build a second Mount Rushmore of wrestling, Jericho's on that one.
Oh, hands down. Hands down. Yeah.
Because my first one would be Hogan, Flair, Shawn, and Taker. My second one, I said Hogan, Flair, Shawn, Taker. My second one would be Jericho, Cena, I don't know who else. Rock. Maybe Dusty Rhodes.
I would do On the first one, I would do Stone Cold, Hogan, Ric Flair, maybe either Andre or Harley Race.
Mm.
And then for my next one, I would do Shawn, Jericho, Rock, and
Undertaker.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So collectively, Jericho would make our second Mount Rushmore if there was one.
Yes.
So he's not quite into that upper echelon of those top 4 guys. Why do we both agree on that? What do we think Jericho would have to do in this back half of his career, which we know he's in the back half of it, obviously, to get him to that top 4? Or can he get to the top 4? Are those 4 guys, whoever they are they just, is it too far out of Jericho's reach?
The only chance I think he would have is to come back and have another WWE run. I'm getting like Vince McMahon. I can't say it. WWE.
Sports entertainment, pal.
Yeah, it's not wrestling. But if he came back and he, let's say, had an incredible run with Roman Reigns, won the title, had a good little run with it for up to 6 months, and then had an awesome send-off retirement match, then you could either put him as an honorary member to the top of Mount Rushmore or possibly squeeze him in, maybe. But beyond that, I don't know.
I think he has to come back to WWE, and Jericho has been the number 1 top guy of reinventing himself over the years.
And he needs to lose weight.
Well, that I was going to say, he needs to come back and he needs to reinvent himself again for a final WWE run. And it really needs to duplicate the success of the List character. If he can do that, reinvent himself again, get that momentum behind him, and then maybe win the world title and then go right off into the sunset, then I think he's got a shot.
Yeah.
But is that likely to happen? No, probably not, unfortunately. All right, man. That's going to do it for Chris Jericho on the Broken Skull Sessions. Please make sure that you subscribe to Peacock. Go check it out. It is well worth your time. Also, make sure you subscribe to our podcast wherever you find your podcast audio. That's where we're going to be. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. That way you get a notification to your device every time we upload a new video so you can see our smiling faces doing this podcast. So, that being said, follow us at PBW Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Buy a t-shirt, ProWrestlingTees.com/PBW Podcast. If you forget all those things, check out our fancy ticker there at the bottom. You can find our show every Monday and Wednesday right here. Next Monday, we've got some exciting things for you. We'll tell you more about that on Wednesday's edition of the show. We're here in person. This doesn't happen very often, so this is kind of cool.
Yes.
So, as we give the old Larry Sabisco away, this is Jared Justice. I'm Chris Belcher. Thank you very much for checking out the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast, and we will catch you guys down the road.